I can go.
Okay, thank you, Jared.
No problem.
So, tell us about your journey, how you became interested in farming. Tell us about your story getting engaged with farming, organic, what's it mean to you? I'll bring those up again, but off the top of your head, let us know where
Sure.
you're coming from. How's it going?
I grew up in Boston. Favorite color is purple. Studied economics and Japanese. Absolutely no background in farming whatsoever. I thought at one point cows came from the supermarket. I think I was 4. My mom still brings that up. After school, I joined a food startup. We made really healthy food for preschool and daycare age children, along with associated educational material, and delivered it every day to preschools and daycares around Boston. We got a lot of, this is a great idea, but I'm not willing to pay for it yet. And we actually just launched this website tonight. It's like a revamp, so I'm looking at it now on your screen. It looks good. I'm happy with
Yeah, it's all new to me too. It's
it.
like,
Yeah.
oh boy, I don't know where to go with it.
So after bouncing around a little bit after that, went belly up. I moved to New York City, walked in the front door of Floyd Cardozo's brand new restaurant and asked to work there with very little experience. And he gave me a shot. And we became very close. I worked there for a little over a year, and just was a little worn down from being a New York City cook. So I decided to go into farming, which I thought would be very restful and slow. So I took about a month and looked literally all over the world for a gig. I looked at woofing. I looked at places in Massachusetts, New York, Japan, Africa, everywhere. I looked everywhere. I had no idea what I was looking for. I got rejected from an incubator farm in New York City, founded by Elon Musk's brother, who made a mistake. Instead, I ended up in North Carolina, just outside the Research Triangle, so about 25 minutes, 30 minutes west of Durham Chapel Hill, where I apprenticed for a year. And the reason I chose that farm is because it was a holistic approach to farming. They had 250 acres under management, about 110 that they owned, some of it conserved, some of it where like power lines were. And they were a tillage production for their vegetables when I got there, but by the end of the time I was there, they were no-till, which was a very interesting transition to be a part of, and not something I knew that was going to happen while I was there, but kind of got me into that way of thinking. They ran about 100 head of cattle, a couple hundred sheep, a couple hundred hogs, bunch of chickens, bunch of layers. So, really everything, and did restaurants and farmers markets. And it was founded by a ex-New Yorker who had moved down 30 years ago, who was also a PhD soil scientist who had formerly taught at NC State. So that's where I cut my teeth and kind of got the groundwork and understood what I wanted to do. After the apprenticeship, the opportunity came up to jump to, sorry, Nikis is sending me stuff. I jumped to Doublebrook Farm in Hopewell, New Jersey, and ran their poultry program for just about a year. And that was pretty cool. We revamped a lot of the infrastructure, learned a lot about, raising animals. At one point and I believe they are now hatching all of their own stock. on site, and then processing everything on site to be sold through their own outlets, which you would call a vertically integrated business model. But I really liked that business model, and actually on my way driving down to North Carolina had asked to speak with John McConaughey, who owns Doublebrook Farm, and he spent 3 hours with me just driving around talking to me, and that really stuck with me. So it was an easy email to make when I was wrapping up my apprenticeship. At the end of my year at Doublebrook, I started to get a little antsy and looked at Hudson Valley Farm Finder, which is one of many farm listing services. I hope to answer a bunch of the questions that were asked all kind of in one swath, but it's a listing service that is aimed to help protect farmland as farmland, not necessarily to preserve it or conserve it, but to help maintain it as usable farmland. So it pairs aspiring farmers or farmers with little to no capital to get into land with typically transitioning farmers or wealthy landowners who have absolutely no idea what to do with the land, but know they want it to be a farm for whatever reason. I didn't realize there was a 7-acre plot of land 20 minutes from the GW Bridge, but there is, and we are farming it. It had been a farm forever and slowly been parsed out and parsed out and parsed out. And actually, just before the current owner purchased it, was in discussion for being broken up into 15 houses for development. But the current owner astutely decided that was not the best use of the land. And we got to chatting and just agreed on all sorts of stuff, really the broad strokes and what makes a business partnership work. We kind of understood that the details would fall into place as we got stuff going, but our temperaments were the same. Our use of the land, our understanding of how to formulate our partnership were in alignment. So it became obvious that it was a good thing to try to pursue with one another. So I do not own this farm. It is owned by a family, and I'm employed by that family to run this farm. But I was tasked with writing up a pretty extensive business plan, and I manage it nose to tail. So we have conversations, the owner and I, sometimes multiple times a day, sometimes once every 2 weeks, sometimes once a month, based on our needs and the needs of the business. But it's really my ship to steer as long as we're following the guidelines that we set out together at the beginning of the year. And we approach it much like I would approach a bank. And, I'm not being, we're very respectful of one another and try to approach it as a partnership versus one of us telling the other what should be done. And so far, it's been fantastic. I wouldn't ask for a different situation. So we broke ground. That first map was us. So you can see our proximity to neighbors is very close. And we broke ground in February of last year because it was so thankfully warm right before COVID, and 2020 was our first year in production. So we did, as you saw on the Instagram, we moved about 35, 40 apple trees around the property to make room in that major growing space, took down some decrepit trees, and got going. We do have a tractor, and I would describe us as low till. Our goal is to be generally no till, but I do not see tillage in and of itself as a bad thing. I see it as something that should not be overused and abused. I'm not dogmatic there, but something I am really passionate about is no weeds. I agree with people like Connor Crickmore and Jean-Martin Fortier that you should do everything in your power to rid your farm of weeds if at all possible and if it's within the scale of your business model. So that was really something we strove to do. And it also really matches our aesthetic in that we serve a high-end clientele. We're surrounded by a bunch of the wealthier zip codes in the nation, not to mention New Jersey. So the people who purchase from us expect a very polished product and a very clean cut image. So that's really what we shoot to achieve. And it also honestly makes farming a lot easier, even though it's a lot more work at the outset and you don't reap any financial benefits from focusing so much on weed management. And John and John, I cannot pronounce his last name, and I will if I'm forced to, but John, who runs Rolling Hills, was my mentor this year and was instrumental in helping me make a lot of tweaks and small decisions that all together culminated in some, really radical, larger shifts in how I was thinking about doing things, whether it was guiding me on what varietal of carrot to go for, or, what's more marketable, how to package things. So it was a really beneficial relationship in those regards.
Maybe I'll interrupt you real quick, Jared, and see, John, any chance you can unmute and join us in here? And I'd love to hear any thoughts you have about your experience driving up into concentrated population land and meeting with Jared.
Yeah. So, well, first off, it was really nice to meet Jared. We had a really good relationship. We hit it off. He lived in Doublebrook, and so had I. And yeah, it was just really cool to actually have someone to kind of like talk shop with throughout, any given day, and just kind of like spitball ideas around. Closter is crazy. It's definitely where like professional athletes and celebrities live. And he's just like smack dab in the middle of it. And I was really impressed when I got there because it really was beautiful, picture worthy, and anyone coming in to kind of like look around would definitely feel at peace and leave with a good impression, whereas in July and August, like our farm just, looks crazy and unkept, which is fine. But yeah, it was impressive. Really well thought out infrastructure ideas that he made early on, his irrigation system, all buried lines. And he is doing kind of like a small scale market garden, if you will. So a lot of those infrastructure needs were like well thought out and well executed early. And yeah, I mean, it was, I was really impressed. I met John, the owner, and Jared described it perfectly right. I mean, he really he had, the balls in his court, Jared's that is. He's really kind of formulating the vision. And they have a good dynamic, so it was cool.
All right, well, so I think we've got to the end of your 10 minutes there, Jared, so we're going to come back for deal with questions and discussion. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not supposed to answer this question?
Well, go ahead, but we'll answer the one question. Go ahead, and then we'll move on to the next.
Okay. Squiccerino. There, I did it. Shuhong, I totally screwed up this year with my eggplants. I planted them early and didn't cover them, and they got demolished by flea beetles and whatever else. And then I also didn't have a propagation house this year, so I started stuff what became my store, and transplanted things in my house, and then kept stuff in my house and on my front porch, moving them in and out every night and morning, which was a lot of fun. And then once I realized the mistake I had made, I tore a bunch of stuff out of the ground and replanted all the extra eggplant I had that I had slated to sell to customers. So that's how I had eggplant that survived flea beetle season, because they weren't in the ground. But this year I'm going to cover them and do like a sacrificial lamb at the end of each bed. I'm also playing, and maybe this is too much, but I'm also playing around with doing hedgerows mixed in with stuff we grow, and then only spraying. We are certified, so I only use certified sprays, but only spraying in the hedgerows and planting those out early so that they attract the pests, and then hopefully those early pests get eaten up in the hedgerows. I can't remember what that tactic is called, but like, yeah, so that kind of thought process, and then covering. Huh?
Biodynamic.
Yeah, and then covering the trap crop. Thanks, Scott. And then covering with like 1 layer of 1 ounce frost cloth, which I double use as my frost and insect netting. So, you know, until the thread is gone or I can't do it anymore.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Jared and John. John from Rolling Hills Farm and Scott from Morganics. I put their links to their websites in the chat. They're two mentors so far.